You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Haney, and as always, I am thrilled to have you here with me on this ride for a conversation today, a good conversation that we're going to have today. I am bringing back a past guest from the podcast. Her name is Rachel DeAlto. She is Match's chief dating expert. She is a relationship expert. She is now a published author. We're going to get to that in a second. That's the reason for our conversation today. But you might remember she came on the podcast quite some time ago to talk about dating during the pandemic and how people were making it work. And her role as Match's chief dating expert, she has a lot of insight into what people are doing on some of the most popular dating apps: Tinder, Hinge, Plenty of Fish, quite a few other ones, Match, of course. And now we're talking with her today about relatability, because her brand new book is called Relatable: How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere, Even if it scares you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I've got the book here and I have just started getting into it. It is a real page turner. It's very funny. It is, in fact, very relatable. It's got lots of stories about making connections, forging those conversations, and having those connections with people. The book just came out on September 7th, and it is all about, like I said, forging those connections, which is something that we might all be just a little bit out of practice on. You know, that might be understating it just a little bit, because we have been very isolated. We have been connecting with each other through screens, and, you know, there's a lot more in-person interaction happening. And it can be tough. It can be scary. There are lots of reasons that it can be scary, and that's something I want to talk with her about too. So in this book, Rachel breaks down the why about being relatable, why it's important, how it's helpful, how to do it, how to be relatable, and how to relate to others, and the who. The who, I think, is very key to this too. The who in her book, and part of this, is all about recognizing which relationships are toxic and either need to go or need to change. And I really want to talk with her about how we can determine which relationships need to go and which ones need to change, because I think that can be such a difficult thing to kind of figure out, especially when you're kind of focused on wanting to connect with people and that's what you want to do. It can be hard to determine maybe time to just let that one go, right? Sometimes you got to just cut your losses. And unfortunately, that's true. Not every relationship is meant to be a life-lasting relationship, right? So as I said, she was a past guest on the podcast. She was also, by the way, the relationship expert on Married at First Sight. So I want to talk with her a little bit about that too. Wealth of experience in this area, wealth of knowledge in this area. Now she's got a book out, so we're going to bring her in to talk about being relatable right now. Rachel, thank you so much for coming back to join us on the Three Things to Know podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. It's so good to see you.
Great to see you again. And congratulations on this, your book, Relatable. This is required reading, I must say.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's been such a journey. It's so cool to see it in people's hands. It's still trippy to me though.
I cannot,
I was like, oh wait, there it is.
I know, right? I cannot even imagine you. It's in the world. It's out there, and it's so good that it is out there. So I want to talk about the full title of the book. The full title is Relatable: How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere, Even if it scares you. And that last part right there, I particularly love it so much because it can be really scary to connect with people. So why is that?
Oh my gosh, there's so many reasons. One is social anxiety itself has been on the rise. It was something that never really was a consideration before. And in the last several years, people have been studying it more and recognizing there's millions and millions of people suffering with some level of social anxiety. And I think oftentimes we're afraid of making that connection, whether we have it or not, because we are afraid. We're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of being rejected. All of those fears that come up when you put yourself out there, even in the smallest way, can be really impactful. So I wanted to reach people who have that little bit of fear, have that little bit of trepidation before they go in and meet somebody new, whether it's a friendship, professional, or a romantic situation.
Yeah, that fear of rejection, that can be a huge thing. And like you said, regardless of the type of relationship, and it does really seem like maybe that fear is a little stronger these days. So I want to ask you, why now? Why were you inspired to write this book, Relatable, right now?
Yeah, And that is such an interesting question too, because when I started writing it, so I've been writing this, and it started out as a keynote that I was seeing the effects of it, and I said, oh my gosh, this needs to reach more people, and I can't be on every stage, so let me write this book. So I started it pre-pandemic, and then I recognized, oh my gosh, now that we're going through this and we've had these moments of isolation and these feelings come up, now it's even more important. So pre-pandemic, people were socially awkward, we had social anxiety, we had confidence issues, we had all these challenges with relationship building, and now it's just exacerbated, and it's this weird serendipitous timing of being able to have this book out right now when I think we're in probably our most vulnerable state in terms of relationship building.
We are certainly out of practice in a lot of ways. Now, you have a whole section in this book on the most common people problems. So I need to hear from you. What are some of those?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people problems that we have. And so I think that every people problem is solvable. And then there's some that we just have to back away from. So I talk a lot about toxic people. That's a huge point, I think, that so many people need to hear about, because if we're not actually having the conversations, we don't know what to look out for. Also talk about people pleasing, because that is a big one, and one of my most passionate, because it's not serving anyone. I get where it comes from, and then you can understand it from a logical standpoint. But if we don't start to put into practice some boundaries, then we start to actually hurt ourselves as well as our relationships.
That's one for me. I am a people pleaser. So paying very close attention to that section of the book for sure. Now, for people who may not remember, you were also a relationship expert on Married at First Sight. So I'm really curious how many of these problems were kind of popping up in that setting.
So many. There was definitely so many situations where you could view that challenge of getting to know someone. I think one of the biggest things that was a challenge when I was on, and I see it now pretty much in any reality show, and especially when you're marrying a stranger, is getting vulnerable fast, because there is so much fear. And typically, when you are willing to let experts choose who you marry, you've probably been through the ringer for a minute, and you probably are a little frustrated. And the reason why a lot of people decide to show up and want to be cast for that show is because that they feel like it's kind of like that last effort of like, I'm not doing it right, show me what I'm doing. But there's so many walls that people put up once they're at that point. So seeing how people can get vulnerable or try to get vulnerable through that fear is definitely something you could see repeatedly. And I'm sure, I haven't watched the last couple of seasons, but I am sure that is still a challenge, because humans are humans. We get hurt, we put a wall up, and then we don't want to be vulnerable again.
Sure, that can be very challenging, very scary. Now, having come from that experience, and also just your popularity, we're going to get to this in a minute, but it's growing, it's blowing up online. I love to see it, and it's so incredible, and there's obviously a reason for that. But I want to ask you, what do you think is harder, relating to strangers or people who are already kind of in your life and you have some familiarity with?
Oh, they're so different. There's absolutely, I think it's a different feeling. Maybe it's like a different part of the stomach that gets upset when you're in those situations. With strangers, there's less to lose. Obviously, it can be really uncomfortable to start those connections and to introduce yourself or start those conversations. But there's less to lose, and there's less of that fall that you could have, as opposed to the people in your life when you are trying to nurture a relationship. I think the toughest ones are somewhere in the between, when you have a brand new connection and something super long-term and solid. Because long-term and solid, and I said this to my daughter the other day, she's starting a new school, she has new friends, like everything is new. And I said, listen, honey, I'm like, you are in a position where you don't have a foundation built up yet, where everything you do, and this is not to your fault, but like, you could be judged wrong, and people aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you don't have that history with them yet. Whereas, if you've been with somebody, you've been hanging out with them for 10 years, you could probably mess up a lot. You don't have to worry as much. But it's that middle stages of, you're past the introduction. Okay, we got past that fear, but now we're trying to nurture something and not mess it up. That's the scariest part, I think, honestly, for anybody that's trying to build a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like maybe in those spaces, people can be hyper aware too. Like, okay, this happened, making a mental note, that happened.
Yeah, and our anxiety kicks in. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. I want to pull that back in. And then
Toothpaste out of the tube.
yes, yeah, I can't do it. Sorry. Yeah, nobody's getting that back in there.
hmm Okay, speaking of strangers, I want to talk about your amazing following on TikTok. Really blowing up there. Oh my gosh, this one video, I think maybe one of your most popular videos, it's got maybe 1 million views. 5 signs to know if your relationship will last. What do you think what it was about that particular video that resonated with so many people?
It's so interesting. I hate to use the word, but it's relatable. And
hmm
people, one, I think we always want to take a temperature of ourselves. We love to assess ourselves. We love to assess our relationships. So with that video, people will think, oh my gosh, how does my relationship stack up? So that is always something that people really are drawn to. And I also think they enjoy the positivity. A lot of TikTok it can get dark over there. There's
Yeah.
sometimes where I'm like, we got to keep scrolling because I don't know if I'm not mentally prepared to watch this today. So I try to keep it positive and not do clickbait, things and tell you how awful you are, or how awful your partner is, or like, how do you know if he's cheating? I don't know. They probably don't know either, whoever's saying that. So I think the positivity and also just a way to assess and say, oh my gosh, like I'm good. And that's what I love to see in the comments. They're like, we have all 5. And I'm like, yes.
Yes, yeah. And there's such good takeaways in your videos too. You're giving information, which I particularly love, and I love too that you're referencing, the other experts in the field too. So it's really factual, and that's what I particularly enjoy about. So that's why I'm following on TikTok, just so you know.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it over there. It's become like my favorite platform. It's
It
so
is.
fun.
It is a fun one
Yeah.
for sure, and it's quick, and it's good stuff, and your stuff is good stuff. So Rachel DeAlto on TikTok, of course. When you're listening, that'll be linked in the show notes, so you can make sure you find her. But I want to get to another bit of messaging that we see a lot online. You do see a lot of, you love to see people really coming into their own, being comfortable with who they are. But we do see some of this messaging that says, I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but maybe I'm your shot of whiskey, or, whatever it is that you see. But why should we also be thinking about relating to some of those people who maybe aren't that cup of tea or what have you?
Yeah, I get it. I think it's also a protective mechanism. Most people that are putting that out there are trying to protect themselves from being rejected again. And so it's easier to say that. And I'm definitely all for, I am who I am, like love me or leave me.
Mm-hmm.
But if we start to get to know each other, I always say that there's no one that you couldn't love if you knew their story. I actually just posted, there was a place, I think it was the Netherlands. I'm so bad. I think it's Netherlands. They have this library where you check out people and you sit down with people and you learn their life story. And you sit down with them for 15, 20 minutes and it's, ex-convicts or people who are dying or people who have had some sort of other experience, and you get to know someone. And I do believe that if you sat down and you actually got to know someone and have a conversation, you would change the way that you feel about people. And we're just so pushed off nowadays where we just immediately get turned off or we make assumptions. And that's not how we bond. But also, there are people that may not be your cup of tea or you may not be theirs that you need to be connected to. So people all the time are, quit that job. It's toxic. Well, guess what? That job may need to feed your children,
Mm-hmm.
so you can't leave every situation. That's why I talk about that gotta go, gotta change in the book of setting boundaries and understanding where people come from. But also, what effort are we putting in to actually getting to know people that we do need in our lives or should be a better situation in our lives and in our relationships. So I think just looking at it from a different perspective is so important.
Mm-hmm. And there are multiple angles to come at this from, right? So when you're talking about being relatable, there is a certain sense of being self-aware and being able to see maybe some of yourself in what someone is going through, but there's also the element of opening up so that other people can see that in you and have that opportunity to relate to you. How are those skills different?
Yeah, it definitely does go from both angles. So you start with you and your self-awareness and how you show up or how you're seeing other people, but you also want to recognize, how am I putting myself out there? Am I being vulnerable? Am I being real? And that's where connection, which is one of the 3 pillars of relatability, is really all about connecting from that real space. And so many people now, we do it subconsciously. We're putting on filters and masks and all of these things, trying to make ourselves look better, sound better, show up better and seem more perfect. And then all of a sudden, we're not actually making a connection. And one of the things that I try to remind people of is that if no one knows who you really are, how can they really like you, love you, want to hire you? How can they know that you are that person? And so that's something to be, I think that self-awareness starts with, like, how do I show up? And then once I know how I'm showing up in the world, now I can also see, okay, how are other people showing up? How do they affect me? Where's the spaces that I want to inject more energy into and more attention to?
Do you think it's possible to be good at one and not at the other in terms of one of those sides of relating?
Oh yeah, it's a lot easier, I think, for people to be aware of other people and how they show up more so than ourselves, because it is easy to look outside the window. It's a lot harder to look inside yourself and to be that reflective. And it's so interesting because I don't know how many times I actually use the word awareness in my book. I should probably like Google search that. But it really is. Awareness is everything. Awareness, but self-awareness is where that superpower comes from.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to what you talked about the toxic situations. And you talk in the book about knowing when to change and when to walk away. So give us a little taste of that. Like, how can we know? Because that is such a challenge.
Yeah. And honestly, no one can tell you, like, there's been very few times when I was working with individuals where I was like, you really need to consider what you're doing in this situation. And whether it was a romantic situation, a lot of romantic situations, or a professional situation, it wasn't me to decide. But other people need to reflect on, how is this person impacting me? And how is this impacting my life, my happiness, my success, my joy, all of those things. And so I put them into the two categories of either gotta go or gotta change. And gotta go means they gotta go. These are people that do not belong in your life. They don't belong in your sphere, and you can remove them. So friends, I see this so often where people have toxic friends, but they keep them around because they're not sure if they can replace them. Well, guess what? You found that one, we can find you another one. We can put the effort in. Where energy goes, your direction flows, and you get results. But then there's the ones that you got to change the way that you approach that relationship. And I talk about my relationship with my ex-husband, and that was a relationship that I could get myself out of, but I still had to be connected to him because we had children. And so you have to change the way that you show up, and you have to change the way that you allow them to impact you. And we can only control ourselves. This isn't a book I'm sorry, I probably would sell a lot of copies if I'm like, this is magical and you can all of a sudden change the way other people behave. We can't do it. We have to change the way that we behave in order to impact the way that they show up in our lives.
If there was some sorcery where you could control what other people do, I would buy that book.
Right? You're like, you are just going to be nice.
Mm-hmm. Right. But this is a great book for the things that we can control, right? You can only control the controllables. And a final word here, any final words on relatability? And also, what do we get out of it? What are the big benefits for us as a society on practicing our relatability skills?
Oh my gosh, we are the loneliest people on earth right now. Humans are having a rough time of it. And that's one of my biggest calls to action here, is just understanding, one, how important connection is for us. We are wired for connection. We are biologically created to build connection. And when we don't have it, and especially in the last couple of years, because we were so isolated and disconnected, so many mental health problems came up because it is a direct impact on our mental health. So just embracing the fact, like, it's okay to feel lonely, but now we can do something about it. And that's where I really, if I had any takeaways, it's someone writes me and says, oh my gosh, I was able to use this and make a connection, and now I don't feel as alone anymore. Because we're in this space where we don't talk about that enough, that this is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And your book breaks it down so beautiful. You've got the why, the how, and the who. So it really walks you through it. If you're looking to be more relatable, to be able to relate to people, others, can't recommend this book enough. Rachel, tell us where people can find it.
Oh my gosh, this is my favorite thing that I get to say. Everywhere books are sold. But it's in stores at Barnes & Noble and your local bookstores, and on Amazon, of course, and all of the online retailers as well.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again, Rachel. And
Thank
we really
you.
appreciate you making the time to come and talk with us about this on the 3 Things to Know podcast.
Thank you.
In her many, many roles, Rachel clearly has a wealth of information to share with us. So thankful for her sharing some tidbits from her book, Relatable, how to connect with anyone, anywhere, even if it scares you. And it does scare a lot of us, right? Very thankful for her coming on the podcast to talk about that. Now, in terms of connecting with people, what's one easy way to do that? To share a secret. And that's kind of what we do every week when we tell you what you need to know in NEO. And it's particularly on the nose today because we are talking about a place that considers itself Cleveland's secret coffee shop. It's called Coffee, and it's in Old Brooklyn. And if you go to their Instagram page, which we'll talk about in just a minute, they do say Cleveland's secret coffee shop. Now, it started out as a hybrid coffee, bike, and book shop. That was back in 2018. Now, there aren't bikes there anymore, but they do still very much have the books and also lots of plants. It is a beautiful setup. And what's better than sharing a cup of coffee and a conversation with a friend or maybe a stranger, right? You can do that. There were definitely times over the past year and a half or so when it was to go only, but the dining room is open there again. It's called Coffee. It's in Old Brooklyn, which is a very charming neighborhood near the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, if you're trying to figure out in your brain where exactly that is here in the Northeast Ohio area. Now, they're closed Mondays and Tuesdays, and I feel it. Any business that can take off Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm here for you. I really think that we should have 4-day weekends. And what a wonderful life that would be, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. Now, they're open Saturday and Sunday. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but they're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, so you can check it out Wednesday through Sunday. Their website is oldbkcoffee.com. And I mentioned their Instagram account, right? Because Coffee is doubling as a good follow this week, in addition to what you need to know in NEO, because they have a very cute Instagram account. That Instagram account is Old BK Coffee. Not only is it just a bright, beautiful visual thing to incorporate into your feed, but they also sometimes post very cool things like specials. For instance, they have a street team where they had posted flyers around Old Brooklyn, and it was one of those pieces of paper where you rip off a little piece of paper and on it was a little coupon for a free 12-ounce coffee with any food purchase. So that's something cool they let people know about through their Instagram page. Also, they do other cool, sort of kitschy, fun things. They posted Spotify playlists from the ladies of Coffee not that long ago. So you can check that out. And they also have very cute merch, by the way. When you think of a coffee shop, you might not necessarily think of merch, but they do have very cute merch. Of course, they have coffee mugs where they say, let's drink coffee and talk about our dreams, or some iteration of that. And they've got cute little hats, flat bill hats with their little upside down coffees. That's kind of their little logo, is 3 upside down coffee cups. It's just very cool. I think you will be happy if you are a coffee lover if you follow Old BK Coffee on Instagram. You certainly won't be mad about it. I'll tell you that. So that is why that company is doubling not only as what you need to know in NEO, but also as a good follow this week. And that is it for our 3 Things to Know podcast this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that some of this was relatable to you. Definitely check out Rachel's book. That'll be linked in the show notes. It'll be linked on WKYC.com. It'll be linked on the YouTube video where you can check that out, where you can find out more about Rachel and connect with her. And if you're not following her on TikTok, you really should, because she is very relatable on TikTok and Instagram and all the other places, but really blowing up on TikTok. And hey, if you are liking this show, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. That really helps us connect with more people here in Northeast Ohio. And if there was ever an episode that's about connecting, it is this episode. So if you found some value in this, I encourage you to share it with a friend, and hey, maybe that'll help you make a connection. And I will see you back here next week with more 3 Things to Know.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.